Hi, my name is Justin, and I'm the developer of Sauce for Strava. Today I'm going to be talking about the new analysis suite, Sauce Performance. If this is your first time hearing about Sauce for Strava, you might want to take a look at some of the links in the description before watching this video. Although it's not strictly required, it might provide a better understanding of how Sauce and Strava coexist. To begin, we'll go into the Strava website and look in the training menu. Here we can see two additional menu items that will bring us into Sauce Performance: fitness tracking and peak performances respectively. Since this is our first time using this feature set, we'll be presented with an informational page that goes through some of the things to expect. One of the more important points to understand before getting too far in is the process of what's called synchronization. Because Sauce for Strava is a browser extension and does not use servers to store your data, the first time you use Sauce Performance with a new athlete, including yourself, the data for all your activities must be imported directly into the browser's database. This is known as indexed DB for the more technically inclined. So we'll go ahead and get started on this browser, which has been wiped clean. We can start to see data import slowly from the Strava servers. It will go as fast as the Strava servers will let us go. And the synchronization will run in the background over the next day or so, depending on how much data you have. We can sort of skip past some of this so you can get a basic idea of what the user experience is after you've synchronized, but you'll notice that the system is automatically redrawing as soon as the data is available. If we go to the upper left here, we can click on what's called the sync panel, and this will give us some status about how synchronization is going, and then give us options for setting the FTP history and the weight history, as well as enabling and disabling estimated power and a few other options. For the rest of this walkthrough, we'll switch to our browser, which has already synchronized several athletes, and we'll just talk about some of the highlights and what you're seeing on this screen. On the left are summarizations of different stats for the range of data that we're looking at. In this case, we can see that the peak performances for this 12-week period, the peak heart rate, peak watts per kilogram. So these were all the standard Sauce for Strava sort of parameters, but instead of being for one activity, we're able to see them for a range of activities, and that's because of the synchronization system. And any of these panels can be collapsed if you're just not interested in them. On the right, we have the activity details section, and this can show activities that are in this date range. Also, if you click on the charts or any of the panels that have activities in them, it will load the activities into that section so that you can get a little bit more detail about them. It's not a full replacement for the analysis page of an activity, but it's sometimes nice to see activities together or just have a brief glimpse at that information before you jump to the analysis page. So for example, on the training load chart, we can highlight a particular day and click on it, and that will load all the activities from that day on the right. And we can expand some of these rows to get additional information about what was going on in that activity. Going back to the charts, the different data sets can be enabled and disabled just by clicking on their label. Later on in the video, we'll go through the customization of these charts and panels where you can reorder them. But if you just want to not look at a particular data set briefly, you can always just click on that label. Some of the charts are grouped by a metric. Usually this is week, month, or year. And in those cases, if you click on one of their columns, then it's actually going to load all the activities from that week, month, or year. In the case of time and zones, this can be really useful to see how much intensity you've had for a particular week or month. And if we are not interested in zones below threshold, we can just click on those lower ones to disable them temporarily. Elevation gain is pretty self-explanatory, and this is just a nice chart to see how much climbing you've done for that date range. So let's jump over to the peak performances page now. And the first thing we're going to see is a peak performances table. And this table has various filtering options, like we can see all athletes. And in this case, we've synchronized about a dozen different athletes, some people that I know, and just some famous riders who post their data publicly. This can be really useful for coaches who are trying to track the performances of multiple athletes. In this particular example, we can see that Andre Greipel, who even though he's retired, is still extremely strong. And when we switch to watts per kilogram, we can see that the Legion pro crit rider, Corey Williams, has the highest watts per kilogram, and that's not surprising. Both of those riders are absolutely phenomenal. And when you click on each of the rows, then that will load that data into the details panel on the right, so you can get a little bit more information about it. Below, we have the peak performances chart. Now, this is a similar set of data, except we're drawing it over time. And this can be really useful to see how you're trending in terms of your peak performances. So if you've been regularly working on your sprint, or if you're looking at a very large date range, like we can look at all of the activities, then this will show us the peak 5-second power for each year. And so in this example, we can see that for 2007, that was some of my best sprinting. If we want to look at different time periods or different distances, then the gear icon on the top right of each panel will give us some more settings that we can use for that panel. And this is actually going to bring us into the next section, which is going to talk about customization. So far, everything we've shown is effectively the default layout of SOS Performance, but everything can be customized, and that means that you can add charts multiple times with different configurations, and you can change the order, and you can even change the size, including running them side by side if you prefer to run with a really wide screen. Each of the charts can also have a custom name so that you can sort of identify what it is that chart's highlighting. So, for example, we just added this new chart on the top, and this is an activities stats chart. And now we're going to click on the top right gear icon for that particular chart, and we're going to call it just energy. And you'll notice that there's actually a fourth option in the categories for energy, and this will show us the kilojoules. Now, it's not enabled by default in the normal activities stats chart, but we can add a chart which just shows energy, and it can complement the other activities chart if we don't want to run them together. And here we're changing the width, and I set it to 50%. If I set another chart which is adjacent to that same width, and you have the available real estate on your screen, then it can actually run them side by side. Anybody who's used a power meter knows that sometimes things don't work out. I don't think Matteo, even though he's a great cyclist, did 4,000 watts, and I know that Phil Guyman can't do 2,400 watts. So in SOS Performance, you can edit an activity, and you can override the TSS if it's just incorrect or it doesn't have one. And you can also choose to exclude that activity from the peak performances chart. And this way you get a more accurate depiction of what the actual peak performances are. Now, if we jump over to the training chart, you might notice, and this may not be there if all of your data is perfect, a missing TSS label. And when we click on it, we actually have a long listing of these activities with as many stats as we can possibly find about them so that you can possibly provide a manual override for that TSS. In some cases, it may not be a valid workout, and you can just put 0 in there if you're tired of seeing that missing TSS entry on the left, or you can choose to ignore them. When you're done editing, you just hit save, and all of the updates that you made will be applied, and your screens will be updated. The activity table is an optional panel that you can add to either of the SOS Performance pages, and this will show you a table of all the activities that are in the time range that you've selected. And the nice thing is that each of the columns are sortable, so you can see the hardest or the easiest stress score and distance and whatnot for all the activities that are in that time period. This last feature is definitely the most important feature, and that's the pepper badges. Now, we're actually on the analysis page for a specific activity, and what we're going to see is a feature which is enabled by the synchronized data that we've collected. Now, when we're looking at this activity, we can actually go through their peak performances, and we can see how they compared against our prior peak performances. And not only that, we can compare them against different time metrics, so we can see if this was our best performance of all time for that calendar year, or just for the last 90 days. That's all for this video. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave comments below or go to the website and use the email address. I try to respond to everybody as fast as I can, and I hope you guys enjoy it.